your mind, lost in. Hey, everybody, and welcome to Lost in the Groove. Today, we have Judy, who is a voice coach, and as a creative podcast, we're artists, we're stoners, we love to have a great time. We're going to learn everything you need to know about voice coaching and the experience it's all about. And what is it? So, Judy, without further ado, who are you? Who is Judy?
Judy is a traveler of rabbit trails, okay?
Okay.
Anybody in the music business that has done it for 50 years like I have, we have taken rabbit trails in the career part. But the cool thing about that is if you do it right, your previous rabbit trail will help you do your new rabbit trail well. So I hope
Okay.
that kind of introduces me as a vocal coach who has also been there, done that on stage and in the studio, which gives me a kind of a unique approach to vocal training. It's very practical, not so much like theoretical, but
Right.
based on voice science. But if you can imagine being a scientist, a voice scientist, did you know that a lot of voice scientists can't sing their way out of a bucket?
I did
Not
not know
well.
that. I did not know that until right now.
Well, just like think about it, like an Olympic athlete trainer, right? They can't do what the athlete's doing.
Well, I think of it as when you talk about like film production, because you have a lot of these investors and corporations that they're not creative, they're not artistic, nothing. They can't even take a fucking French fry and put ketchup on it and make an abstract art and charge $180,000 for it. But they are able to orchestrate these people that are creators and artists
Yeah,
to correlate
yeah,
and collaborate and make the films that we love and watch over and over again.
right, right. And I like to say it's absolutely true. It takes a village to create an artist, or to help the artist be visible and therefore be successful in a commercial sense. You know, you can be a private artist and be even better than the commercial artist. But if you want to make money at it and so that you can devote more of your life to your art, and that's true of music or art or any of the arts, then you need some people that don't necessarily do what you do well, but do the business part really well. Yeah.
It's also interesting because you have a lot of singers, a lot of very famous singers that will talk about how they never had any vocal training.
Sure.
So you have this mass stereotype of where, oh, you're naturally born with this beautiful voice. And well, I'm going to kind of blow your minds away. Did you know that Freddie Mercury had voice training? Did you know
That
that
doesn't
Prince had voice training? Did you know
that
that
doesn't
Michael
surprise
Jackson
me.
had voice training? Like a lot of these people took voice training to help build their careers because they wanted
Mick,
to reach another level.
right. Mick Jagger does vocal exercises before his
Right.
concert. Yeah.
And he's still performing at 70. I'm like, what the fuck? It's crazy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like, what has been your experience with that? Like, for example, working with these artists and creators for the past 50 years.
Well, let's start with me. You know,
Okay. Yes.
I never had vocal coaching at all, except for 1 year of classical training in college as part of my music, experience in college. But that was really more learning how to pronounce the Italian than anything, and learning some melodies. There wasn't really some in-depth technique that I was taught, and so I had a successful career. Uh, you know, Starting at 17. I'd been singing my whole life, and starting at 17 in doing jingles as a staff member of a jingle company, and as a part of a band that was a cover band in Memphis, and various and sundry different little live events. But I never had vocal coaching. But then I experienced an illness that put me in the hospital and on a ventilator several times. Uh, when my son was born, I was in the hospital 3 months. And so I lost an octave and a half of my range from that experience, right? And so I had to we moved from Memphis to Nashville, and I had to actually get a vocal coach that most of the session singers that I was singing with at the time, doing the records, doing backgrounds on the records, they had. His name was Gerald Arthur, and almost all of the session people went to him. And so I was having trouble getting I'd gotten most of my range back myself, but I'd had trouble getting all of it back. So I started going to him, and I got all of it back. And actually, 2 years after, I think it was 2 years after starting with him, uh, I had a number one record. And
Wow.
I was totally, very successful. So what I learned from that is the practical importance and some practical ways to do vocal training. And I realized that some of the things I used to do before I experienced vocal loss, those were right techniques. I just like people that never have taken voice, they grow up singing great. But the problem is when they run into some kind of vocal issue, or maybe they hurt their neck doing some weight lifting wrong, or they've just done one concert too many with bad technique, then they start to lose their voice. And here's what happens: they start trying too hard, and then that's where you see these artists showing up when you Google vocal problems, and you find out that they have ended up with vocal surgery, even, or just a loss of a
Like
bunch of
Miley Cyrus, for
tours.
example.
Sure, yeah, and tons of other people
Right.
that have lost their voices. So the thing they need is not. They need professional vocal coaching that's built on experience on stage and in the studio of what really works, to do two things. One, to deliver messages really effectively, and two, to protect their vocal health. And believe it or not, those two things go together.
Yeah, because it's a craft that has existed for, say, thousands of years. The art of performing in a theater. Being somebody, if you ever travel and go to, for example, like Rome in Italy, and you go to these old 2,000-year-old auditoriums or stadiums
Mm-hmm.
that they used to have these performances. Ask yourself this question: if you look around, everything is shaped a certain way, diameters, lengths, height, radius, so how round things are. The reason is because they understood that there is octave waves,
Mm-hmm.
there's sound waves when a person is singing, and it's so. You don't think about that, but you brought this up so beautifully. It's where you have to balance those two things out. It's not you can perform, but if you're not going to have a voice tomorrow, then what's the point?
Yep, it's going to be a short-lived career.
Exactly.
Yeah, right, right. And the thing is, even metal screamers take voice. Okay, if they're smart. In my humble opinion and experience, they learn to scream backwards instead of forwards. They don't push, they pull. And that can create a ton of resonance. So that for popular genre singing, um, which usually involves an amplification, right? A mic. Even in musical theater, a lot of times they'll have the headset mic. But what they need to get their power from is the message and resonation, not excessive air pressure through their chords. And if you think like a musician, like if you hit, like if you're a great drummer, my husband was a great drummer, you don't bang the crap out of the drums. You hit it in such a way to ask it to sing, to to create and set up those vibrations, right? Same thing with a guitarist or a pianist. You don't bang it, you ask it to sound either loud or soft. And it's a very controlled, nuanced sound that's so much more interesting, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what we want to do with our vocal cords. We want to vibrate them, set up vibration with just the right amount of laser beam air running through the cords. Think like a reed. You want to just set up vibration in the chords, and then the chords set up vibration in the larynx, and then the larynx, if your throat's open, sets up vibration in all the houses of your resonance building. Right? And so
Right.
you have to know how to access them. And if you make these little moves that look like that instead of that, you'll be able to open the doors to your resonance rooms.
So it's like being able to learn different gestures and motions and positions. But is it also important to understand like your octave range, like understanding, you know, where your tone level goes, how far it can go, or no?
What you really need to do is be able to access all of the rooms in your house. I can't tell you how rare that is to have someone be able to access the rooms in their house. Almost everyone that ever comes to me has far more voice than they think they do. And so what I teach them is how to access it. And look, it doesn't look weird. It looks kind of cocky, like that. I've just opened my postnasal drip zone, which is so the throat channel goes up the throat and forks out the mouth and the nose, right? That crook where that fork happens, that's where the problem is. That's why it gets tight and limits your tone and makes your throat tired. Could be loud, but it's going to be thin loud instead of open loud. And you hear the difference in my voice when I did that.
Right.
So I'll give you. Let me give you some tips to help open this. I want to start with eyes. So we're going to do this funny little exercise. Like
Okay,
I
sure.
want you to like have no eyes, like poker faced eyes, like no expression in your eyes, and your eyes kind of small. Like you don't want anybody to read your eyes, right? And I want you to count to 3. I'm doing that right now. And then do the same thing, count to 3 the same way, but open your eyes wide. And see if you can tell the difference in the sound of your voice or as you perceive it and the feeling in your throat. All right. And everybody listening can do this. So
Okay.
small eyes, go. 1, 2, 3. Go ahead.
So
Small
I
eyes, small eyes,
small
no
eyes.
eyes.
No
Right.
eyes.
No eyes.
Just no
One.
eyes.
Right.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
And then, well, do
Big.
it, do 1, 2, 3 with not much, with small eyes, loud. And then do 1, 2, 3 with big
Okay.
eyes,
Okay.
loud.
All right.
Right.
Okay.
Do it again.
All right.
Ready?
All right. 1, 2, 3.
Wide
Small
eyes,
eyes.
big eyes. Now,
Big
one.
eyes.
Now say 1, 2, 3 again.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, there you go. What I wanted you to notice was the difference in the sound and feeling in your throat
Yeah.
in speaking 1, 2, 3 with small eyes and speaking the same thing with big eyes. Did you feel a difference?
Yeah, it's you feel your ear passage is wider and smaller. So when your eyes are bigger, you have more ear that's going through.
Yeah. So your sound is going through a more open throat channel. And that nasal drip kind of opens. In fact, just lifting your eyebrows, you can feel your nose open, right? Lift your eyebrows. Feel your nose open?
Yeah.
Okay, your throat channel opens up, down, and back. The upper part of the throat channel, it doesn't mean you have to sing buggy eyed all the time, but you need eye language. That way, you open doors to the resonance you need without thinking about it because you're talking. This is why people talk with their eyes. Because when they don't talk with their eyes, they sound boring and maybe guarded, and maybe they're lying and maybe they're insecure, as opposed to talking with eye language where you're clearly trying to communicate something to someone,
And
right?
especially when you're like radio or broadcasting.
Yes, yes. So,
Like
yeah.
I remember in the early day, I remember you listening to the radio and then all of a sudden it's like 9 o'clock in the morning. They're like, "Good morning." So we got country rock on from Sunday 9. How are we doing? They do that to get you engaged and like get interested in
Right.
what they're putting out. And I'm thinking about this right now. Oh, that makes sense.
You know
How
what?
they talked.
You're using your eyes right now too.
Yeah.
You are. You might
Yeah.
not even know that you were, but you were. When you're thinking about having a conversation, you don't use your eyes. When you are having a conversation, you do. So here's the deal, the little secret. All right. It's not enough to sing or speak into the empty air, okay, so that your voice can, quote unquote, sound good. What's important is to know who the prime directive should be, where the prime directive should be, what the prime directive should be. And that is get a response from the heart you're talking to. Don't just talk at them. Actually make their body language and their facial language do something, even if it's just to freeze them. So if you're podcasting like we are right now, and we're seeing each other over video, so it makes it easier for us to do this.
Right.
But if it's just radio, or you're a podcaster doing a solo thing without an interview subject to talk to, or if you're a radio DJ, you're talking to the one heart of your audience, and it always should be one heart. Well, in your mind's eye, you need to have in your imagination that heart express something like, oh yeah, oh cool, like do that with nonverbal body language and facial language, and respond to what you're saying, because that's what tells your voice what to do.
That's
That's what
why
tells your voice what to do.
that's why I feel like some great songs that we know and love and we're like, "Oh, I relate to that so well." It's because the singer and the songwriters and the band players, they all are capturing that one heart, you know?
That's right.
So,
That's
yeah.
right. Same thing live. You see Bono, or you see Garth Brooks, or you see Celine Dion. When
Liza Minnelli.
great singers, yes, Andre Bocelli. It's like they make the whole venue, even if they're in a stadium,
Right.
feel like one, and it's like a tractor beam of stage presence. But stage presence is just doing this, getting a response from the heart you're communicating to. So that might be the audience or the record buyer, listener person, but it might be a lot of times with songs, it's to a particular character, like acting technique in a scene. You're talking to this dysfunctional other that you're in a relationship with, or you're talking to this person trying to tell them that you really do love them, give them confidence in the relationship, or you're talking to someone about whatever. You got to know who you're talking to, what you want them, what you're saying, what's the message you're delivering,
Right.
and what the response you want is. And then just get it, even if it's just in your imagination. And you know what? This is a great way to write songs too, because then you stay in the moment, and it's what makes our voices valuable, is getting the response to our voices. As we're speaking, if we're not engaging the listeners of your show, then we're failing.
Right.
But we're engaging the listeners to your show, hopefully, but because what we're saying to each other is interesting to them.
Right. And it's also engaging. I say this, one of if you're a person that's into creative and alternative music, one great band is like the Velvet Underground. And I give this because, like, for example, like their first album, Velvet Underground and Nico, they're these are songs about very difficult topics: drugs, abuse, trauma, but they're done in a way where it's beautiful. It's kind of creative and weird, but you kind of get caught into that friction in the tracks. And it's something that's really hard to do, but something really easy to do once you figure out on what's the steps you need to get there
Right,
and be able to
right.
make it.
And sometimes the words, especially in more esoteric kinds of music, the words are almost like metaphors for feelings and for situations and all that kind of stuff. But it's kind of like magic, the words and the melody and the groove kind of go together to speak a message. So sometimes the message is really clear, as in country and in some like R&B, pop kinds of stuff. And sometimes it's like really earthy, clear language. But
Like Wu
sometimes
Tang
it's
Clan.
more poetic. Sometimes it's more poetic language or abstract language, but it's still a message, right? So if you're the one delivering that message through this poetry, and even if you are a poet, that's a great way to write poetry. You got to know who you're talking to, even if it's yourself or the powers that are higher than you, power that's higher than you, or if it's to a specific person or to the universe, the one heart of the universe. Who are you talking to? You got to know that first. And then, what response do you want? What response do you want to the message you're delivering? And what would that look like if you were successful? That tells you what words to come up with. That tells you what sounds to make. That tells you what vocal licks to use and not to use, because otherwise it's just like you're communicating vocal licks, right? That tells you when to go for a high note, because that you need that to get the response that you want. And so I kind of boil it down to this. You need to do, before you perform, like break it down to two things. One, set yourself up physically. And that goes with vocal tech. The vocal technique you should have memorized with your vocal exercises and your practice beforehand. You can't this is like being in the fight. Don't be trying the move you just learned in karate school in this fight, or you'll get your block knocked off. Instead, you've got to memorize the good vocal technique, but then set yourself up physically by moving your head over your tailbone or the heels of your feet. If you're sitting, bring the podcast mic or the interview mic or the whatever mic you've got. Move your knees forward so that the mic will make your head go back over your tailbone, right? So if you're sitting, you're playing your guitar for a writer's round, head over tailbone instead of forward. And you'll have a lot more breath control as well because your rib cage is wider. So set yourself up physically. Learn to use your eye light. You really, you balance your head over your heels or your tailbone. Then set yourself up psychologically by knowing who you're talking to, why you're saying what you're saying. In other words, what the message is, and what the response is that you're trying to get.
Right.
And then be willing to use all of yourself. Be willing to stand on your head if that's what it takes. And then you won't have any stage fright because your whole focus is on getting that heart's response. So you're not worried about how you look, or being perceived by somebody else. You're just only concerned with getting that response back. And then those two things, set yourself up physically and psychologically. Man, you are way beyond, where you were when you weren't doing that. And you're ready to create magic, not perfection.
I try to get myself into a zone.
Mhm.
This is weird. I learned this from Simon and Garfunkel. So they were a really great folk band out in the 60s and
Oh
70s.
yeah.
And I love Paul Simon. He's such an asshole. He
Oh
had
my
an
gosh.
he had
Yeah,
an
what a
inter-
groove master, right? Besides
Yeah,
everything else.
seriously.
Yeah.
He talked to a few years ago. He had an interview and he said that, oh yeah, it was nothing. We just got stoned in the back, in the studio room, and we just, created songs. Like literally like that. That was his exact word. And I was like, you asshole. So you just like grabbed a bunch of Hershey's and just sat there and like, okay, we're just making bookends. All right, cool.
Yeah. You know who else did that? Because spent a lot of time in Memphis before I moved to Nashville. And it was Sly and the Family Stone. I did a lot of vocals over at High Records, and I didn't work with them, but I knew a lot of the rumors that went around. And one thing I was told was that that Sly and the Family Stone did their recording there, and that in that studio, and they would spend a week there. They would like spend the night in the studio, and like there would be substance abuse was proliferating everywhere. Okay, all kinds of substance abuse. And Sly would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, get over to the keyboard, start playing a riff, and everybody else would kind of fall in, and they'd create this thing, So whatever, whatever works, you
But
know,
it's all
uh,
about creating environment, where we're talking
in
about.
the moment, being in the moment, being
Yeah,
present.
exactly. It's just it's a lot to take in all at once, because when you look at music, it's just a song, right? It's 3 minutes. You play it, you're done. But there is so much that goes into it. The story of how the words are created, to the person that's going to be singing it, to the instruments that are going to be played.
Right.
So many different pieces. It's I'm still trying to get my mind wrapped around it.
You can take a song, and I think it was Babyface and Quincy Jones were famous for having this little conversation one day. Uh, I forget which one of them that said it, but they said, like, if you can take a song, strip all the bells and whistles off, all the production bells and whistles off, sit down with the piano or a guitar and just play it and sing it, and it moves you, you got a song. And the rest of it's production values. Now if you get, the bubblegum stuff, the silly stuff, that even has a message. Let's go be happy. If there's the heart of the song itself, the sort of the bones of the song, and then when you put production values on it, like you choose a steel guitar or not choose a steel guitar, instead choose like Jeff
Acoustic
Beck,
or electric.
have right, or have Jeff Beck play it instead of this bluegrasser play it, then you bring it into a different genre, meaning it's almost, you're using a different language. It's French instead of Italian. It's going to speak to this audience as well as this audience. And man, I want to write those songs, because then you are able to express this message uh, well in different languages according to production values. So when you're an artist, you've got to create your artist definition, your artistic definition. And part of that is trying to figure out, what language do I love? What language does my heart love? What am I listening to a lot? What language does my voice love? What is my natural ability? And what is my voice good at? And then what does the uh, what does the audience love? In other words, what is commercial? And if you put those three things together, what does my heart love? My own heart. What does my voice love? And what is selling out there? What is the commercial world that media is reaching? What do they love? You put those three together, you got a career.
Yeah.
And you've got a fulfilling career. You're not just trying to do what everybody else loves. You're also speaking through the language that you love.
Yeah, but there's also reality of a lot of artists that they get their contracts and they get a career and they're miserable because
Right.
they're not
Right.
doing what they love or are passionate about, and they can't be expressive because their company, for example, are not allowing them to.
Yes, it happens all the time. And a lot of times those artists break free and they do go their own way with a different producer after they get some success under their belt, but sometimes it kills their career and they do get bitter. So in my journey, I have had that bitterness, okay? But I've also learned that bitterness is your bitter enemy, the bitter enemy of your life. So instead of being bitter, be better. And now we don't have the bottlenecks that we used to. There's a lot of noise out there, right? That you got to compete with. But express yourself and think of those three things. Express yourself to the nth degree that you want to express yourself, your truth, uh, what your heart loves, but also understand that you do have to reach your audience. That's the business part. It's just being visible and accessible to the people that would love your message through the language that you want to speak. So you have to learn your craft really well, and then you have to learn the business really well. And all the business is how do you get visible? How do you get through to be able to be accessible by the audience that you want?
Right. Well, I it's a very cocky attitude, but the way I think about it is like this: there is only one lost in the groove. No one makes this podcast like this except me because it's
Exactly.
my podcast.
Exactly. No, you are totally right. There's no competition with originality. There's
And it
no
goes the
competition with originality. Yeah.
And it goes the same thing with singers or artists. That's why I feel like if you feel that you're not going anywhere and you sound like the rest of the crowd, then don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, don't anyway. Sound like yourself. And where vocal training comes in is just giving you access to yourself, full access, and also protecting your instrument should you get successful.
I well, that's a question that I might bump into one of these days. I have no idea. But let me ask you something. I mean, you've had, I guess, 5 decades in the industry. I mean, in the past 5 decades, what do you think were the biggest triumphs, like the biggest achievements that you've seen for like yourself?
Well, one, there have been several kind of in a step like fashion. One was getting a staff position at the biggest jingle company in the world. And that's where I really learned vocal technique. And those were the days when editing required blood because you had to, so you had to be really good because otherwise somebody's going to have to use the razor blade and slice that tape up. So, a lot of bloody fingers. So we didn't have tuners and all that kind of stuff. And so I won big time, first of all, by getting the gig, but second of all, by being in a place where I could learn so much. The second thing was actually getting my voice back from serious damage. So much so that I had more range than I'd ever had before. And then I had, I won New Vocalist of the Year in the ACM Awards one year. So I was like the queen of the world and got to be on the Tonight Show and all the biggest shows on TV and the biggest stages and all that. And so I got to be up there for a second, learning about what it takes to be up there and stay there for a minute, right? The next big thing that I learned was how to fail and fall. My label just got dissolved, and so then I had to learn to either sink or swim. And I had to pull myself up from major depression of being the queen of the world and then being nothing. And boy, was that a learning curve. So then I started leaning into my songwriting. I had already, written for my own works, but then the next thing I had was a number one record for Leanne Rhymes as a songwriter, BMI Millionaire Award. And then I learned so much about songwriting from my mentor, Dave Loggins, who you might know from Please Come to Boston and all kinds of
Yeah.
other incredible hits.
Please come to Boston. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Oh, yeah.
I put that on. I had a 78 VW camper during the pandemic, and
Yeah.
I drove to Connecticut from New York. I went upstate, and I'll never forget this. I was on the highway. And I had that song blasting in my camper.
Yeah.
It was
You look into
amazing.
his writing and you'll be amazed at how many huge hit songs he's had. But he became not like my other brother and my mentor, and I sang a lot of his demos in the big years that he had, like Winona, She Is His Only Need. I sang on She and I, the demos for those. I actually sang on the master with Winona and Dave for that record. But I learned so much about digging deeper in the well as a songwriter. So, and then I had the number one and all that. And then that career faded, and I learned what it was to lose the music and have to figure out who I was without music. That was a huge era in my life, and I had to get comfortable with myself and what my meaning was, just breathing air and not having success at all in the fields of the arts. And then I started from the beginning again. A friend of mine who was in the Leonard Skinner band, who is named Carol Chase, she and I had done a lot of background vocals together through the years, and done a lot of writing at Warner Chapel together through the years. So we knew each other. So she knew that I knew some things I didn't even know I knew. And when she was having trouble with a note on the road, singing, it was kind of straining her. She asked me for help in hitting it, and I'm thinking, why do you think I know? But somehow I did, and she was able to hit it better. And that little germ became the spark that got me interested in vocal coaching. And that was about 25 years ago. And then I started, throwing my hat in the ring as a vocal coach. And when I started getting students in, I realized that I had learned through all those years so much about the voice, and about using it in practical situations, and about the highs and lows of careers and what it takes to navigate being an artist. And so, then I became curious, and I learned from doctors and other vocal coaches, and just through experience of what works not only for my voice, but what works for all my weird clients, every weird client that came in with a strange issue. And I learned about the voice, and more about technique and why things work the way they do. So that's what I bring to the world of vocal coaching. And now I'm back to songwriting, a musical about musical about runaways. I'm back to producing. I've had number one records from my productions. I'm back to singing every once in a while myself. I have a Spirit Award for and a media placement in a sci-fi, in the Amazon sci-fi series, The Expanse, for a song that I did with my husband and my son. So it's like, my point is, my rabbit trail world is the same as your listeners' rabbit trail worlds. Everything we ever did, even when it comes to an end of that, it's not, don't think of it as a brick wall. Think of it as a turning point, and know that you're going to use that experience. If you do it right, you'll use it for the next success that you have in life, for the next era that you have in life, to be valuable to other people and be successful in your journey.
Right. It just this kind of reminds me of like Jim. You've heard of Jim Croce, right?
Jim Croce's producer was my producer, Tommy West.
Get out. And I think of Jim Croce because two things. First off, he would sing about the most bananas things you can think of: roller skating derby queens, telephone operators, looking at a wall that's blue and then white, walking to Georgia, which is like 500 miles. Just absolute insanity. But the second part is, he died. Like, he died literally at the peak of his career. So you're then left with the question, or the rabbit hole, I guess you want to put it, is where do you go from there? It's, you have those people where they have these amazing careers, and then they're right there, and then bam, it's over, done, dead, gone, never seen again.
Live your dash well.
You want to elaborate?
And on the tombstones where they have that little year, and then they have the dash, and then they have the year that you passed. Okay, that's the dash that we have. And none of us know how long the dash is. But the point is, make yourself valuable. Make yourself valuable to someone else. When you do that, you win. You win no matter how short or long your dash is. And you know what? I want to go out like just rolling, just like continuing to be valuable to other people and feel all that love coming back, because you do get it back. You can't, I think the mistake we make is where we try to get as many toys within that dash as we can for ourselves, as much fame and glory and credits and all this kind of stuff for ourselves. Okay, we will. That's like a black hole. Your dash becomes a black hole. Where the
Yeah.
dash is found, where it works, and you win even if you die, is when the music goes on after you. And the music going on is not just the single that's on the radio, it's also the experience that people have being exposed to you or your voice or your music while you had your dash. Then you become eternal. And whatever happens after life, that's a whole new, I don't care. I just want, my job is to live my dash well, you know?
It's
I hope it
really
makes sense.
it's no, it's an interesting perspective because the thing about artists is that as much as you try to control, you can't,
No.
because in the end of the day, like whatever you're going to put out there is going to be understood and represented from artists. This is why I never understand when you have these artists and creators and they're getting angry at their fans about their comments, and then they have this whole thing and like this whole fight and this whole debacle, and I'm like, you're creating your art for an audience, for people. You, like you said, you're creating this heart, this soul, this direction. So what does it matter if one person is mad about you or this, or you're having one direction being pulled on you? It doesn't matter. What
You know what
matters is,
that's about? That's about fear. And I had a
yeah.
really
Oh.
wise lady tell me one time, never do anything out of fear, always do it out of love. And we're not perfect. Sometimes we get afraid and we get angry and all that. But when you get angry, my suggestion, and four fingers pointing back to myself, what are you afraid of? What is the fear driving the anger? And then process that and realize you're, maybe that's not your job. That's not your audience to be trying to please. Your job, and if we try to please everybody, we're going to be a big fat vanilla wafer. We want to be laser beamed into, this is my job. I'm going to make a difference here. A laser beam can cut a diamond. A flashlight beam can't beam rather. A flashlight beam can't cut butter. And so if we're just trying to please everybody, touch base with everybody, and make sure nobody's mad at us or nobody's saying bad
Can't
things.
please everyone.
No, and we're going to get really afraid because the trolls are out there in every realm. So the thing to do is just realize, look at that and go, do I need to respond to that? Do I need to clarify something or correct something because they're actually bringing up something that I want to change? Or do I not want to change what they're angry about? And if so, ignore them. If it's on social media, well, put them in the spam filter, or block them on your socials. But don't worry about them, and even your fans will probably come to your rescue before you even have to. But
Yeah.
instead, who are you talking to that needs you, that needs and wants and enjoys what you want to deliver, your wisdom, right? Your life experience, which can be, sometimes a really valuable thing is just to make people laugh or make people smile or groove, because man, they've got a stressful day. And so there's all kinds of messages that are worthy and valuable. And you got them. You just got to figure out, what do I know about life and love and situations that could be valuable to my ideal customer, like my fan that I want to bless, go for that. And you don't even have time for all the trolls. You don't have time for all the people that are not who you need to speak to. Right?
Yeah, and the amount of comments and support that, for example, like we get with the podcast. I'm not gonna lie, we get some hate, and it's so funny. It's like the dumbest crap you'll ever see in your
Haters
life.
gonna hate. Yeah.
Yeah, and we just, I just laugh. Like my other host, Chris, which is also my best friend, we're just like,
Yeah.
they watch 10 seconds. They don't even,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like a person that goes up and says, "Oh, I hate Sam Smith because, yada yada." I'm like, have you listened to the music? He's
Yeah,
They're really good. It's really
yeah,
good. I like it.
yeah,
And you
right.
should be able to love and appreciate the art that you want to be able to love and appreciate. It's like I
Right.
love that. And I
And
love that analogy, using a light bulb to cut butter.
yeah, a laser beam to cut butter. Right. A laser beam.
Laser beams
Not a
cut butter,
not
sorry.
a not a flashlight
Not a
beam.
flashlight. No
Right,
flashlights.
right, right. And and that goes for, four fingers back again, like stuff that I don't like. Well, why don't I like it? Maybe it's just not in the language that trips my trigger, that moves my heart. And so I don't have to troll it, you know. I don't have to. I don't have to hate it unless I'll tell you what I do hate. I hate messages that make the world angrier or meaner or that kind of thing. When you that I can speak to, but when you're talking about hard subjects, difficult subjects, yeah, you need to use be speak to those situations like because they're real, but don't encourage like the negative. You can don't have to be Pollyannish in your art, but speak to life in such a way. Like for instance, don't encourage suicide, and there are
Obviously.
art forms that do. So those are the things that I'll speak to in a negative way. But if it's just something that's not my particular heart's language, leave it alone. Let it be good for somebody else. Just I don't have to buy the record. I don't have to put a like on it, but let somebody else. I don't have to put a thumbs down on it either. You
Right.
know.
It's
So
like we're entitled to our own personal opinions. Like, I have a personal belief, and I'm very strong about this. I would rather give an 8-year-old heavy metal, okay, like Tool, all right, instead of handing them trap rap. Okay, I would
yeah,
rather them listen to heavy metal than trap. And that's my personal opinion because of what I've seen. I'm not dissing creative artists in any way or shape or form, but at the same time, where have we stopped accepting that we can be different and accept that creatively? I don't understand this.
I know, I know. Well, what's cool? I think creators are more. They tend to understand that. The prisons. I used to do volunteer work in the women's prisons in this program called Better Decisions. And what I noticed, men and women, there are, reams of people in prisons right now because they weren't allowed to express themselves artistically. So, whatever language we need to express ourselves, like even heavy metal, yeah, like yell about something or whatever, do it artistically and express yourself artistically so it doesn't get all bottled up and you kill somebody, you know? Or you react instead of decide about a situation that has a much better solution than the one that you came up with. You know what I mean? That got you into
Well,
prison.
you think about music that's, again, no diss, but when you take songs that are about those hardship, those difficulties, go back maybe 20 years, compare it to now, it's like you're telling people to take a gun and stab and kill their mother and father and their whole school. It's like, why are there so many school shootings? Tell me why there's over 300 trap songs on TikTok right now that's saying, yo, kill my teacher, yo, like all that shit. And like, you could see this. It's in the description that's in the TikToks. Like, it's not obvious. I don't think that's creative. I think that's being very abusive.
Very. And you know what? Even when the kid says they don't listen to the lyrics, they just listen to the groove.
Subconscious. I've done psychedelics. I'll tell you that
Totally.
right now. Subconscious,
Yeah,
100%.
absolutely. It gets in there. So on my podcast, I've got a whole episode devoted to the responsibility of successful voices. And by that, I mean the voices of music, voices of lyrics, the voices of poetry, the voices of movies and novels. If you're going to be an influencer, you're freaking responsible for the responses that you get to what you put out there. So
Right.
that's what I would say. So what bothers me is that people that put that stuff out there are they're, the only thing they're doing it for is to get money or fame.
Right.
They could care less about what happens, from the art being expressed.
Repercussions.
So, right, from the repercussions. So, I would say, you better watch it because we are responsible. If we're going to be successful, we're going to be responsible.
Well, music in many ways has shaped our culture. I mean, think about disco, the punk scene, grunge, the metal mosh pits of the 2000s. Like it does shape and mold our culture because let's be honest, life sucks. A lot of us work corporate jobs that we cannot stand, and we need some fun in our life, and music is a great outlet to do that. But it I feel like for the first time ever, we're coming to the question of, is music safe anymore? And I don't like that. I don't like when you reach that point because that's where you start pushing agendas against people. And that's where
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
I don't like
Exactly.
that.
No, no, don't push your agenda on anyone. Instead, I mean, it's back to the old Beatles song, love, love, love. How can you love the world? And there's an old adage that is so appropriate even with music, and that is where your occupation should be, or you should try for an occupation, is where your passion meets the world's needs. So it's not enough to just meet the world's needs because you're going to be in a job you hate. And it's not enough to just do your own passion if there's no market for it. Don't whine about that. Okay. You have to, if nobody wants what you're doing, you're just not valuable to them in that way. It's where your passion meets their needs. And I would say it's the same thing with music. So, first, love yourself because you can't love someone else really well. What you'll do is take them hostage instead, or you'll be codependent or something like that. You got to love
Right.
yourself before you can appropriately love someone else. Same thing with our music and with our jobs, with our lives. For a successful journey has nothing. A successful journey means that you are valuable to yourself and to the world. You know.
Right. It's being able to be collaborative because the thing about an audience and finding a target audience is them having a connection to what you're doing and what you're
Yeah.
making and
Yeah.
how it sparks the other person. And truth is if you don't like what you see, then don't like what you see. Move on to the next thing.
Move on to the next thing, and
That's why we swipe. We swipe with our
yeah,
fingers.
yeah, and that way that's the way that you can minimize the negative in the world. And God
Right.
knows there's voices of negativity and fake news and crap. But then
Hmm.
then you magnify the voices that are doing good things. Uh, you magnify the voices that you believe are worthy by by focusing on them, by telling people
Right.
about them, by commenting about them, by commenting on their socials so that they're more visible. So that's what we can do. We can be proactive. We can't control the negative, but we can ignore them and then focus on the positive and what can make life better for yourself and for other people. And if
Yeah.
people, yeah, the haters are going to hate.
Haters are gonna hate.
Minimize their voices by ignoring them.
Right. And you mentioned this, like the dash on the tombstone. The thing is, we have so much time in this world where don't waste your time.
Yeah, don't waste your time with negativity and with worry. You want to plan for tomorrow. You want to dream for tomorrow,
Right.
not knowing you have no idea what tomorrow's going to bring, but focus on that. And you're dreaming. And the funny thing is when you look at the future in a positive light, not afraid of it, then you can be really present where you are today, because that's the only place you can really be happy is right now, you and I talking on this podcast. The only
Present
place I
moment.
can be happy right now, and I am.
Exactly. And it's also about learning something from the other person, because the thing about
Yeah,
music is instrumental progressions and changes in our styles has all come from one artist inspired by another artist trying something
absolutely.
else different. And
Absolutely. Yep. And roots music will never die because roots music is where it all comes from. Yeah,
right,
we take it and we make just like the English language. I mean, how many letters are there? How many books have there been written? All right.
so
So
many.
we take what feels like home, which is the roots of our cultural music, and then we build on that, and maybe we combine it in a different way with something else, and we add technology that we didn't have before to it. But it's still got a common thread running through it. Otherwise, we can't connect with other people through that music because they need to feel home in what we're doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it also explains a lot on when you listen to these interviews of music, singers and songwriters and musicians. And they're really great because they teach you a lot as a creative person because you're hearing from their own personal experience. And they talk in detail on how they were inspired by Elvis, or the way that Louis Armstrong was playing his horn, just the feeling of that instrument and inspire them. It then
Yeah.
can give you that additive tool, that additive spark, and it all ties into again with vocal coaching. You're giving an additive tool to people's lives
I'm
to
helping them express themselves.
exactly, yeah.
I love
I
it.
mean,
That's why I love my job. Yeah.
I mean, out of all the years that you've been doing this, and here we are now in 2023, what do you look forward to the most moving forward?
Well, quite honestly, there are some of my kind of new artists that I'm working with. I love working with all kinds of artists that already have a great voice that maybe are in a little trouble, and need some help with vocal strain or need some help with a song they're having trouble with. But I really also love working with beginners who have something to say, but just don't have any idea about how to work their voice, and work them up into a career uh, where they're successful and they become influencers. And I've got some people I've done that with, like Matt Carney. But I also have some new ones that I think are coming up. So I'm looking forward to watching them burst open into visibility in the major market in the next year or two. I've also personally am working on a musical that I've been working on for 15 years.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
Yeah, the first rendition of it was wildly accepted. We did it in three different cities: Bristol and also Decatur, Alabama, Bristol, New York, Connecticut, and Decatur, Alabama. And it wasn't quite ready because it just wasn't ready for prime time. It wasn't. It was like a diamond in the rough, but it got great response from the audiences. So we kind of, the scriptwriter and I, Darren J. Butler, we kind of dropped it for a minute, and he went on and got married and had three babies. I went on and did all the stuff I did. And then last year, all of a sudden, he had success with another play, some kind of an award that gave him all this accessibility to more insiders in the New York theater world,
Okay.
including actors. And so he said it's time. So he and I finished it about a month ago,
Oh, wow.
and now we're getting feedback from a couple of focus group readers, and we've gotten our first funding, and we're looking forward towards a reading in New York, either this fall or early next spring.
So
And so
it'll be an off Broadway.
and hopefully eventually in the middle of Broadway. That's what we're hoping.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's so
So,
exciting.
and not only that, but it's got other possibilities too in the realm of other media, like movies or a series. kind of
Right.
thing. It's got a lot. It's got all kinds of possibility. But we believe in it. We're getting incredible feedback, and so I've written I've written about 32 or 3 songs for it, but now we've weeded it down and changed the songs and written new songs, and I've got about 21 songs in there,
Wow.
and we're gonna see how that puppy blooms. But I tell you what, I never gave up on it, but neither did I worry about it. So it's
Right.
kind of finding its own time, and that's anybody that's out there that's creating stuff. I would say it's so much involved is in the timing of when you bring it out. So don't stop doing it, but neither do it out of fear or worry that it's never going to get its time in the sun. And look for windows of opportunity. Look for where you're drawn to continue with the creation of it. And you know, it just art is a funny thing. Like Van Gogh didn't see his success till after he passed, and I do believe that somehow he knows about it. But just keep doing excellent stuff, not perfect stuff, excellent stuff,
I
and
I
that's
would
what.
I want to leave off with this, and I think it's important. And I've said this. George Harrison once said, "All things must pass. All things must pass away." Yeah. Let me ask you something. Where if people want to find you, where exactly can they find you on your socials?
Well, the best place to find me is at judyrodman.com because that's where you can find all my socials
Okay.
and my podcast, All Things Vocal. You can find it from there, or you can subscribe to it. But you also, and I would love for people to look up All Things Vocal. Since you're listening to a podcast, perhaps you might enjoy that, especially if you're interested in the speaking or singing voice. But the other thing you'll find at my website is a free 9-page report on vocal health that you can download, and that will help you a lot.
Oh, wow, that's beautiful. And yeah, that's really important. I'm really happy that you brought up the awareness of vocal health because it's something that is not talked about enough, something you do need to take care of. I'm going to definitely leave your socials below in the description, so if you want to check that out, be sure to check out Judy Rodman and all of her work. I don't even know what to say. This has absolutely been incredible. I mean, when you get this kind of opportunity.
I love talking to you and getting your perspective on these things that are a little deeper than just talking about, what range do I have, but that are really speaking to your audience's deepest places of, like, how do I make my creative self successful?
Right.
Yeah, so I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. Well, if you all listened and enjoyed what you've heard, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Lost in the Groove Pod. So with that, we'll catch you on the next one. Stay groovy, my friends. We love you all.
Absolutely.
Get out of trouble. Don't go to prison.